Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on our Education Series webinar here with the U.S. Shipyard Association. I'm Diane Byrne, the Vice President of the Association, and I'm also the head of our Education Committee. And we are delighted to have John Graykowski here today to present this very informative webinar, which we have titled, Show Me the Money, How to Get Federal Shipyard Grants. These are the grants that the U.S. Maritime Administration makes available to shipyards just like yours every single year. So John is going to run through the process, what the qualifications are, and help lead you through the main points. But let me give you some background information, of course, about John first. So John has more than 30 years of experience in government and in the private sector. He spent 15 years as a professional staff member in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, including as the legislative director to a senator and maritime counsel to the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. From 1994 to 2000, he held an appointment to the U.S. Maritime Administration as a Deputy Maritime Administrator and later as the Acting Maritime Administrator, with oversight and involvement in all of the aspects of the programs and the management. John has further served as the Senior Vice President and General Counsel of Acker Philadelphia Shipyard, now Philly Shipyard. And since 2005, he has been the principal of his own firm, Maritime Administration Consultants, which is maritimeconsults.com, providing a full range of professional services to maritime and transportation industry clients and U.S. shipyards. Before I get to John, I want to also thank our sponsor here today. Our sponsor is Berger Boat Company. Thank you for your support. We appreciate you. And John, take it away.
Thanks, Diane. Just for the commercial announcement side of it, it's actually Maritime Industry Consultant.
Oh, apologies.
The Maritime Administration was already taken. And if you could unmute Jean, I have with me a dear friend, but more importantly, a professional colleague of mine for probably close to 25 years. We worked together at MARAD, Jean McKeever, and she ran and was in charge of all of the shipbuilding programs at the agency. And that was a very big focus of ours when I was at the agency. Subsequent to me leaving, Jeannie worked on the development of this program, this grant program, the Small Shipyard Grant Program, and actually administered it and implemented the program through her retirement, which was, I don't even remember when you left, Jean.
2010.
2010. So she was there at the start. I wrote a grant for a shipyard the first year the program was out and was successful in doing that. And I've been writing grants for shipyards since 2009. And after Jean left the agency, I sort of roped her into working with me on applications. And we now both every year do several, sometimes as many as 3 applications if we're fortunate to have clients that want to do that. And we've got a pretty good track record. So it is a program that's available to a lot of people. A lot of folks haven't really taken full advantage of it. But what we'll go through today is a very, clear roadmap on how to actually prepare a successful application. It is a lot of work. It requires time, attention, and focus in a very short and compressed time period. Because MARAD, they give you maybe 5 weeks to prepare these applications. So where we come in is, if we were working with you, is to help you sort of package the project, help us understand and then translate into the governmentese, if you will, for the application purposes, answering the questions of what are you buying and why are you buying it, and how much is it going to either save, improve productivity, create efficiency. Those are the main questions. So I think, you want to add anything, Jeannie?
No, that sums it up.
All right, let's go, Julie. And I think all of you have access to the MARAD announcement. It does not change very much year to year. What we've done here is highlighted, some of the most important sections, but you need to get familiar with that because that is a detailed guide to how the program, what the application consists of, and how MARAD reviews the applications. So, okay, next slide. So this is just a summary of what the program's intended for and what we've done, or it's done. MARAD's always we to me, since 2008. But those words, foster efficiency and competitiveness, that has to be planted in your brains, because that's the case you have to make when you're buying whatever you're going to buy, or whatever work you're going to do. So it's 6 weeks, between the announcement and submittal date. Can't be late, and it's a very laborious process even to assemble these. MARAD still does things on paper, so you have to have paper copies and burn CDs, for example. MARAD, because the program is so popular, the Congress supports it, MARAD does their best and is required, I think, by law to announce the awards within 8 to 10 weeks after submittal. Next slide, please. So the first question you have to do is determine your eligibility. And please ask questions as we're going along, and we'll certainly have time at the end. I assumed when I wrote this that you were constructing private vessels. So, that's the vessel has to be, you have to be capable in your shipyard of constructing and repairing vessels greater than or equal to 100 feet LOA. But Jeannie has a comment on that. Unmute her. Jean's muted.
Okay.
There
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. The facility also has to be can also be capable of building vessels for commercial or government use as opposed to private use. Vessels that are vessels of 40 feet or greater, which is significantly less of a requirement than the 100 feet.
But I was just focusing on yachts in general, and Diane corrected me this morning that some of you do indeed do some repair work on government vessels, for example. And so, in other words, it's a pretty liberal, low bar for eligibility in terms of the shipyards. And if you look historically over the yards that have received funding, it's a wide range of yards, from large ones like Philly Shipyard down to much smaller local operations. You have to show how the project will foster efficiency. I said that before. Next slide, please. So this is all pretty well, a couple things. One, on the number of employees, I assume all of you are under 1,200. Okay, so, but that is your absolute limit. The DUNS number, that's, if you look at the application, if you look at the announcement from MARAD, it tells you how to get a DUNS number if you do not have one. A DUNS number is required to do any kind of business with the government, and there's now what they call it SAM. There's a central database of grants. Throughout the government, you can imagine there's hundreds of thousands of them, but you got to get a DUNS number in order to submit an application. And Jean, you want to take the next 2 points?
You have to show that you have resources to fund the match that you propose. As one of the earlier slides said, the government will fund up to 75%, although they typically fund much less. So whatever your match requirement is, let's say it's 50%, you have to show that you've got that money available, whether through a bank loan, cash on hand, or whatever, but you have to have a firm demonstration that's available, because that money has to go in first before any government money goes in. And the other important point is that grants can't be used to build structures, any kind of building or facilities, or to purchase land. It's typically for equipment purchases or training, but no physical structures in the yard.
And dredging, for example.
Possible.
MARAD just doesn't, they don't like dealing with anything of that nature. And one of the MARAD's concerns always is anything that has a permit attached to it can get hung up. And the point of this program is to get the money out and get it spent as fast as possible by the award recipient. Next slide, Julie, please. Next, there you go. So the SF 424 is, you can find it today on www.MARAD. It is a standard form application, or standard form that applies throughout, I think, the entire government. And it gives you, as I said, summary information, or it gives MARAD summary information about the project, who you are, where you are, the DUNS number, things like that. But that's the first page of your application. Right, Jean?
Yes, it's an actual government form as opposed to the remainder of the application.
Next slide. So this is the basic who you are. Who are you? So you describe where the shipyard is. You can close it. You can include it, embed a map of it if you want, or a plat. Customer base, backlog, vessel deliveries. Anything that is, and I'll repeat that, but any of that information which you consider to be proprietary, you mark it as such, because in the government there's a presumption that whatever you give them can be released with the Freedom of Information Act request. So, and you know, again, that's something to be mindful of when you're providing information such as your customer base and your backlog.
John?
Yes, dear.
I just add quickly that the government is scrupulous about not releasing confidential commercial or financial information.
Correct.
Once it's marked, they are very good about that. We've never had an issue with a release that shouldn't have occurred.
And MARAD bends over backwards to tell you, the shipyard, that someone's asking for this piece of information and working with you to release only the bare minimum that we would be comfortable with, and which, you know, cannot legitimately be protected. But in the obvious example of your pro formas and balance sheet as a private company that you mark it, you know, confidential, never sees the light of day. And the section 1 asks for your website if you have one. Next slide, please, Julie. You want to go, Jeannie?
No, you go ahead.
So, you know, I can't, you're going to think I'm harping on it, but literally MARAD, it's all nice to have section 1 and the SF 424. This is where they go first, because it's the guts of your application. This is where you make your case. It's analogous to presenting a CapEx request to a board of directors, and the same sort of justification you need to supply in a company. And MARAD is very good. They've gotten very skilled at this program and their analysis and analyses. They know what they're looking for and what they're expecting to see in the way of quantitative information. Okay, so here you're making the case. What's the project? Why is it needed? How are you going to implement it? Itemized cost, license, permits. Okay, that's in the top of section 2. Include a picture of the crane, or include a picture of the panel line, or whatever you're putting in. Next slide, please. This is the big deal. All right. So just look at the slide for a second. And I think, Jean, you and I, we probably would agree, we spend the predominant amount of our time on applications is this section.
This is basically what the agency looks at. I mean, of course, they have to check the boxes that everything else is taken care of and that you meet the eligibility requirements. But this is the meat of the application, is what the agency focuses on almost exclusively.
And they're very good at smelling BS. So, you know, you can't just say, yeah, if I buy this, it's going to make me better. Good. How's it going to make you better? How much better? What are you doing today versus how are you today versus how will you be afterwards, and why? And there's a number of metrics you can employ, and there's got to be some integrity to the number. You got to be able to kind of defend, well, it's going to be a 25% improvement, a 25% reduction in cost. but you got to show your calculation and exactly how you got there.
They want you to identify the assumptions you used in making those calculations.
And methodology. So before you launch into this process, you have to, really embrace this and internalize this as the most critical section, because, MARAD, what did we say, Jeannie? They get about 110 applications a year, or 100 a year, call it?
Yeah, about 100, let's say 100.
How many do they fund?
20 maybe?
Yeah.
The competition is fierce, and the thing is, the longer this program has been around, applicants have gotten more and more skilled and adept at doing this section. So they get a number of what I'll refer to as quality applications in terms of the analysis is provided. So it's really important to have yours be top notch.
And both in terms of what the data says and even in the presentation, right? I mean, lay it out on a spreadsheet, or, it just, little things like that do help, I think.
Yes.
But they'll kick you in a heartbeat if you just say, well, I just think it's going to save me a bunch of money. And that's about as far as you're going to get in the application process. Next slide, please, Julie. So this just repeats what we have been saying to you. And I can't, the ones that I've been unsuccessful with, or Jeannie's been unsuccessful with, we talked to the folks at MARAD, and this is immediately where they go. You just didn't make the case well enough. There were people that did better. So what you want to do is make it through the first sort, and that's usually all the boxes being checked, I'm guessing, being. But
yeah, it is.
It's you head to head with another yard, and if you're not as persuasive and compelling, this is probably the easiest way to lose the game. Next slide, please. So, Jeannie, you can run through. I mean, it's just pretty self-explanatory, but go ahead.
The officer certifications are pro forma. You attest as to the level of employment at the yard, that kind of thing. You meet the black and white requirements of the statute. Year-end financial statements, the MARAD gives you a lot of leeway on that. They have to be year-end audited statements, or if you don't have audited statements that are compiled by a CPA. And if you don't have that, you just submit your most recent financial statement. They will not accept tax returns. But other than that, they're very flexible as to what they will accept. And then the other item on the page is pro forma balance sheets. And they want to see your condition, the financial condition before you get the grant, the effect of the grant on your balance sheet, including the matching funds you're putting in, and then what your balance sheet looks like after the completion of the project.
Okay, now I don't, certainly in the larger shipyards that I work with, this is an issue for commercial ocean-going vessels, primarily due to the fact that most of the supplier base is overseas, a lot of them in Asia. And I don't know much about the yacht building business, but I'm assuming that or I'm not assuming, I suspect it may be similar, that a large number of your components on the ships or on the boats you build are from overseas. Likewise, production equipment. Again, our shipbuilding industry in the United States has been decimated basically over the last 30 years. So, at least in our experience in Philly, the computer-controlled, numerical-controlled machines that we have are all foreign. So the point of this is there's been a very, very heavy emphasis, certainly in this administration. It's now codified in law with Baldwin's amendment, Senator Baldwin from Wisconsin. So it's specifically aimed at this shipyard program. So when you're looking at getting bids on equipment that you're going to buy with these grant funds, you make a honest to God effort to have them built here, sourced here in the United States. right, Gene?
Yes, it's a big deal.
And what happens is if you say, I just can't get anything, if they're not made in the United States, I got to buy it from Germany or whatever, it does ding your application, and this is my sense, okay? Because MARAD is then forced to account, yes, to account for it and explain to higher ups in the Department of Transportation, who also review these applications, as to why they're using US tax dollars to purchase foreign equipment.
And because of the volume of applications, it's obviously easier to pick an application that does not involve foreign equipment, unless you really have a compelling case. So, I mean,
Right.
Foreign equipment has been allowed, but it's an extremely arduous process.
Exactly. Go ahead. So Gene alluded to this, and, you know, yes, the maximum 75%, but, you know, as I tell clients always, you know, MARAD likes to spread the peanut butter, as, you know, thinly and on a whole loaf of bread. And so if you have the financial capabilities or capacity to offer a 50-50 match, and that's typically what I would recommend to a client, is no less than a 50-50 match, it does enhance your chances. Probably on the first sort anyway. Go ahead, Gene.
You're right, it does. The less that they pay, the better, because then they can approve more applications. Then they can also come back to you if they want to entertain your application and propose to you that you reduce the grant amount you've asked for. And if you're willing to do so, obviously that's a good thing, because then they'll proceed with the application based on the lower amount. That's if they're interested in your application to begin with. The time frames for submittal of these applications are tight. The statute requires typically that it be within 120 days of the notice that the program is being initiated for that year. And so that's by law. MARAD has to award the grants. So accordingly, they move the application submission date close to the award of the grant announcement, because they need enough time to do what is a very thorough analysis. Plus, it has to be reviewed at a higher level in the Department of Transportation itself. And as John mentioned, it is critical that you mark any information considered to be confidential as business confidential.
So I don't know, Gene, you know, they always say that they can reduce the grant amount. In fact, they tell you to put a priority down if you're applying for 2 or 3 different things. Which do you need the most? I don't, at least none of the applications I've worked on, you know, there's probably 15 of them at this point, ever had a grant reduction. You know, that MARAD said, you know, you're not getting 50%, we're going to only do 30%. You got to come up with more money. But that is in the application. You got to.
Yes, they can do that. Again, there's so many applications these days where applicants know that it's to their advantage to propose a 50% match, such as John has suggested, that there's generally not a need for MARAD to do that. It's just that they have the ability to do that if they choose.
Right. All right, Julie, next one. We're about done. Ah, there you go.
Okay.
So that was a quick run through. You'll have access to the PowerPoint, I guess, from now on in perpetuity. I get a small royalty every time you open it up, so just go ahead and pass it around, read it at will. Just kidding. Okay, guys. Diane's about to fall out of her chair.
No worries at all. Does anybody have any questions? I know we had a couple people who came in a little bit late, so let me see if there's anything. If anybody does have a question, feel free to put it in the chat box. Otherwise, I do actually have a question that I can jumpstart it with. I'll just give people a moment to type. No, okay. Yeah, let me jumpstart the question. John and Jean, either of you or both of you actually could address this. Jean, when you were talking about the eligibility and training being one of the things that people can get the funds for, does that include things like, say, an apprenticeship program, creating an apprenticeship program?
I believe it does, but I'm actually going to bat it over to John because I know he's succeeded in getting training grants for some of his clients.
Well, yes. Well, it's just defined as training that will enhance, improve skills. You know, that's an interesting question, Diane, whether you can start with, you know, training people who've never worked in a shipyard. I would suspect, well, two answers. One, I think yes would be the answer because we need the skilled trades.
I do too.
And secondly, MARAD, the people that run this program are very open and amenable to you calling them and asking this question. Hey, I'm thinking about starting an apprenticeship program. Can I apply for $500,000 under the small shipyard program?
Mm-hmm.
There's certainly nothing that prohibits it.
But yeah, that's my gut answer.
And I would agree with that. I think they're likely to consider that.
To be honest with you, there's probably, in my estimation, been maybe 2 or 3 training grants over the whole life of the program. Maybe a couple more, but the vast majority are buying stuff.
Right, right. I was curious because I know there's an apprenticeship program and an entirely separate apprenticeship program, and it's through apprenticeship.gov. But I thought, so this is also for specifically the growth of a shipyard, the improvement of a shipyard. Could it possibly fall under the auspices of training?
So here's something. You could ask for money that would get you the classroom equipment, extra welding machines, right? I mean, and it's whether it pays for instructor time, I don't know. You'd have to put that in there, but you know, yeah, I'm pretty sure you could. You know that the apprenticeship program concept would be received positively at MARAD.
Okay. Okay, good to know. We do have a question from someone here on the webinar. It says, we have the word yacht in our company name. I've been told this would make it almost impossible to get a grant. Is this true?
I'm looking at my colleague. No.
No.
The eligibility standards are clear in the announcement.
That's exactly right. And we, as John just mentioned, you can call MARAD and ask them these things. We actually know the staff at MARAD quite well and can verify that, but there's something, it's certainly not precluded.
And that's a good question. I don't know who would have told you that because...
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
The gentleman that told me that, I believe, was a past administrator.
David Matsuda?
There you go.
Okay. Well, if my recommendation would be to call the person at MARAD who runs it and tell them I have a shipyard that meets the qualifications of 100 feet in length or whatever, you know, the other things I have on the slide. Do I qualify?
All right, we will. Thanks.
Because it seems a little arbitrary, Jim, for you to be bounced just because your name has you got yacht in the name, as opposed to ice cream or McGillicuddy. I mean, you know.
Yeah, and Jim, just I don't know if you're aware, but Jared Bay Boatworks, which obviously is not doing the same thing you're doing, but Jared Bay got a grant 2 years ago. So clearly being focused on yachts is not an issue. So I don't see why you would be, you know, I don't know why he would tell you that you wouldn't qualify considering other yacht builders have obviously gotten.
It's not, in fact, I was with a company in the past that built yachts and we got the grant, but the grant didn't go to an entity that had the word yacht in the name. And what I was told was that was the problem.
Strange.
So, all right.
Okay.
We'll give him a call.
Yeah.
Yeah. The guy. Yeah, we can give you the name of the person at MARAD who runs it.
Actually, the name is in the Federal in the notice that I believe you all have access to.
Yeah, it's David Heller, and his phone
David
number is
Heller.
Heller, Heller. Tell him John and Jean sent you, and he will hang up on you. But you know, it's no, Heller will tell you straight. But that just, I mean, both me and Jean and I worked in government. That just doesn't. That sounds like what? Really? Right? I mean,
I don't understand that.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, next, Diane.
Okay.
But please follow up on that, Jim. Please do, and let Diane know. I'm curious now, but I don't think MARAD maintains a list of approved names.
Exactly.
Yeah, Jim, if you can't find that link, the link is in Boardable. So if you can't find that link, just let me know and I'll send it out to you again. That has David Heller's, name and contact information referenced.
It's also on the events page of our website, Diane.
Okay, good. Yeah, great. And John and Jean, I also have another question regarding the grant denials. Since obviously so many companies apply for these grants, there's going to be a majority that get denied. Can a company find out why they didn't get a grant?
Yes, MARAD will do a debrief, and it's very informative. If you don't get a grant, they're happy to talk to you and they'll explain exactly what the issue was and how you can make it better next time if you choose to apply again.
Call Mr. Heller, and I both Jean and I have done that on countless occasions, and we've won more than we lost. But it's useful for the client as well. And we've had instances where David says, "Look, your quantitative analysis was just not up to snuff."
Or oftentimes it will be because they want to do top quality applications. That goes without saying. But within that realm, they also look at geographic diversity. So I had an application that was denied once, and he said, "We did another one from that state. Yours was fine, but we did you last year," whatever. So it's useful information to get, and they're very happy to do it.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, because I think there's a misunderstanding that, especially in dealing with a government agency, you hand in your paperwork and then it gets lost in this big black hole and you don't really know, unless you get a yes, you don't know why you got a no.
No, that's not
great to know.
Well, you have to pick up the phone. Well, in every government contracting situation, there's debriefs for losers. And MARAD is a government agency, but you have to take the initiative and call up Heller and say, "Hey, can I give you a call?" Or write him an email, say, "Are you available on Tuesday or whatever? I'd like to give you a call with, a couple of my people. I want to hear why you turned us down."
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have another question. When do you anticipate the next funding round? When are the applications? I guess we should work backwards from when the applications are due, when they should start filling it out, when they need to turn them in, and then when the funding starts.
It's up to Congress. Go ahead, Jeannie.
Well, I was going to say exactly that. The Congress passes the statute, and then the clock ticks from that date. It's 120 days from the date of enactment of the statute that the applications are due. So the applications you have to get cracking on right away, pretty much. And then they're usually due at MARAD about 2 months into the process, so that MARAD has a while to review them on the back end.
Right. So in terms of 2020, 2021, and the statute Gene's referring to is appropriations for the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development, DOT, okay, because that's where they get their money, and it's enacted every year. The last years, the announcements come out in like the February-ish time frame, right?
Yeah, roughly. That's right.
And what Jeannie was saying is, if MARAD has to announce the awardees 6 months or 4 months. What am I talking about?
120 days. 120 days. Yeah.
Right. From the time that Congress enacts it, that it's signed into law. That's an action forcing mechanism, because MARAD does have a tendency to take every minute of time they can take, and then some on certain projects. So Congress is forcing them to get to it. And so their easiest answer, start thinking about it now.
Absolutely.
Because the stuff you can get together now are the ancillary section 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Not performance necessarily, balance sheets. You start thinking about what you're going to do, and you can start working on the quantitative analysis today.
Registering in SAM, that can take a couple of weeks, so that would be something to go ahead with.
The SAM and the DUNS number, right. But get with your production people, because I always, with my clients, I've worked at shipyards, you know, I want to get to the VP of production and the guys that are actually on the deck plates. Tell me exactly what you need to make your life better and how will it make you better. And you got to rope them in. And they're busy people and they don't want to deal with what they consider to be a pain in the butt. But, you know, if I can get you this robotic welder, one-sided, would that change your life? But you got to invest your production people with the urgency, the importance, and, you know, you're doing this for them. But you need from them, because they do the numbers, guys. You know, I mean, at least in my experience. Numbers meaning the quantitative analysis of why it will be better. Sorry, Diane, go ahead.
No, that's all good. That's all really good information. I'm just looking here on the chat. I don't see any other questions, but is there anybody else who does have another question? Because we want to make sure we address all the concerns you may have about this process. Oh, here we go. Here's another good one. How can we request previous approved applications?
If you're talking about the actual application itself, if you did request a copy of one, it would be so sanitized it wouldn't be any use to you, because they do take out all the confidential information, which is the important stuff like the quantitative analysis and financial statements. So you can request it and you'll get a redacted version of an application.
Right.
But honestly, I don't think it'd be of any use. The form in which it would come out will be so heavily redacted, I'm not sure it would be.
And let me address, that happened 2 years ago. There was a guy who lost, a loser, had asked for a copy of every application, actually. And that's when MARAD proved its mettle in terms of coming back to me at Philly. This is on behalf of Philly Shipyard, on the confidential information and redaction process. And all the other yards went through that same process with them. And what he finally received, this lawyer, is exactly what Gene is saying, which is pages of ink black. You've seen redacted documents. So,
you know, sorry, John, I'm just looking at the refinement of the question, that you'd really want to know what kinds of equipment have been approved. Every year, MARAD publishes a list of the approved applications, and it identifies what the money was used for, and that would include what items of equipment.
I apologize. And in fact, I gave Diane a list of the 2020 projects, and if you go on the MARAD website, it takes some, you know, digging, you will find the announcement for every year since 2009.
Right.
And they
will show this, the subject of the grant.
Travel lifts, upgrade of welding controls, forklifts, cranes. You know, there's a whole range of items that have been purchased with this program. A lot of mobile cranes on tires, as well as travel lifts, but and Lincoln welders, sorry. But go ahead. That's
plasma cutters, any number of things. They do a variety of things.
Basically, in answer to you, any of your capital equipment, it's no different than a capital expense request that you make to your owner, if you will. MARAD will consider it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're more inclusive than exclusive.
Okay, and here's another question. Is there a post-award audit with regard to use of grant funds and if savings have been achieved?
They certainly look at the use of the grant funds and periodically inspect the project and ask for reports on how the project's coming along. They definitely want all the money properly accounted for and then it went for the purpose for which it was intended. No question about that. They do not look at whether you've actually achieved the savings you projected. Probably because most projects haven't been implemented long enough to realize the savings that were estimated. But no, they don't hold you to what you estimated you would save. If that's the question, they don't do that.
But you got to pass a laugh test.
No, I agree, John. I'm just saying there's no post-award.
No, there's not.
Savings, which was the question, I believe. So
no, I'm smiling because that's a very key kind of tell on your part, on our part, to our friends here in the audience. Okay, but it just has to be a credible case at the start. There are monthly reports, actually, I think, Gene, that they have to file during the administration of the grant.
That's what I said. The periodic reports on the money spent and the progress of the project, but they don't look at your efficiency.
No. But for instance, you have to, you're not getting a dime out of MARAD until you certify you've spent your 50%.
Okay.
Which in the case of a capital, crane, you're buying the whole crane anyway. So, as opposed to putting in a new panel line or automated panel line, which is takes 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, whatever. If you're buying a discrete piece of equipment, typically the match and the MARAD money are.
I'd like to add though that you cannot, the grant has to be for something that you are prospectively buying. It can't be for
Right.
just bought before you got the grant and then you want to reimburse yourself. You can't do that. It has to be strictly post-grant.
And new.
And new. And
MARAD does not do used equipment.
I believe a question popped up about leased equipment. It has to be owned equipment.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a question about, can you lease a piece of equipment and not purchase it until the grant is approved? So that would not be permitted, it sounds
Oh, well,
like.
actually, that might be possible.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
As long as it's new equipment. You can't lease some old crane and then say you're going to buy it. It has to be new equipment.
There's a lot of people who've come to me, come to us and said, I can pay $1.9 million for this new link belt crane. I can get a 2010 model for half the cost. Why won't MARAD fund that? Because they won't.
Because they want new equipment.
Yeah.
But yes, you could lease it ahead of time.
Okay, good to know. And I think you already addressed this, but this might have been from somebody who was one of the latecomers. Can more than one application be submitted for different pieces of equipment?
Yeah,
You can put in more than one application, correct?
Well,
Or no?
let me go back to I think you're right about the lease. That's another thing I would call David Heller on before you go through the process.
Yeah, well, I agree. I'm just saying there's nothing, I don't know why I wouldn't comply.
No, as long as it's new. To your question, what MARAD wants is, now this has sort of evolved over time. You have section 1 and then you have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but you fill out a separate section 2 for every piece of equipment that you are buying.
It's all one application, but you could apply for different projects, pieces of equipment within that same application.
And you have to establish a priority. It's Sophie's choice time, which is most important to you.
Right, right. Okay, good. Anybody else have questions? These are some great questions. Thanks everybody for hopping on here with these, because these are ones that, as you're typing them, they're coming to my mind too.
Clearly the quality of your presenters, Diane.
It must be. We're really good at that, aren't we? It looks like our chat box is a little quiet. I'll give it like another second or two. This has been really terrific, really informative. Thank you, John and Jean, both. It's been really eye-opening. I think a lot of the time people get a bit, reticent when it comes to applying for government programs, because we all have this impression of it being this big, huge, faceless, nameless group of people who are reviewing our applications. But it sounds like MARAD is quite receptive to hearing from all the different applicants and not essentially taking us by the hand and leading us through the process, but they want to make sure that people aren't put off by the process. Yeah, it looks like
that works.
Yeah, somebody just put a link here to the press releases from the most recent press release on maritime.dot.gov. You can also Google MARAD Grant Awards and you'll get the same press release.
Yeah, if you Google that, MARAD Small Shipyard Awards, Google will take you through every year.
Yeah.
And Jim, please follow up on that name thing. That just sounds like kooky.
Yeah, John and Jean, for the benefit of everybody here, if they do have further questions, would you mind giving them your contact information?
I should have it on the back of I don't have a problem with that, but Julie, I think I left my email address on the PowerPoint. Oh, here, I can look. Hold on.
It was getting cut off on the screen. I couldn't get it to sit on.
Yeah, on the last slide called questions, I've got my email address.
It was cut off on the screen, John.
Oh yeah, sometimes Zoom doesn't format the same way.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's John G, JOHNG @ Maritime, MARITIME Consults, CONSULTS.com. It showed on my screen there, Julie.
Yeah, sometimes Zoom kind of zooms. Very aptly named. Well, thanks
So
again.
John G. at maritimeconsults.com. Sorry, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, no. Thanks to you both. And Jean, do you have an email you'd like to share too?
You can reach me through John.
Okay, good.
Again,
yeah,
I get a cutoff of everything Jean does and go through me. So I really do appreciate this. You're just throwing business my way, Diane.
I need somebody like that. Well, everybody, we'll be posting this to the U.S. Super Yacht Association YouTube channel. So if there's something you missed or something you want to kind of refresh your memory on, you can go back and see the video. And of course, reach out to John and Jean if you have
please do. Any questions?
So thanks again to both of you. Greatly appreciate it. For those of you who have been tuning into our webinar series, to give you a reminder of what's coming up, we are going to be having these education seminars, webinars, I should say, every Thursday now throughout the summer. Next week is a huge topic for a lot of you and a lot of businesses in general. It's mitigating cyber risk to stem off attacks and stay ahead of upcoming regulations. There are regulations coming from the IMO that will need to be adhered to starting next year. We have a fantastic panel moderated by our own board member, Melissa Orlick, and they will be explaining both a top-down as well as bottom-up approach that you and your company can take to stem off these risks, and explaining exactly what these regulations are that are coming down the pike. So,
well, anyone who does business in the government sphere, because we're dealing with that at the Shipbuilders Council Trade Association, these are huge, these are like big deal requirements, and they're going to cost a bunch of money.
right.
For a lot.
Yeah,
So
I'm
not even, I'd urge everybody to listen to you. Yes.
Yeah, there are regulations that, when people hear regulation, they think, oh, I don't know. But this is the first attempt at actually kind of creating at least a starting point that everybody can at least maintain, because there's no standard out there. Unfortunately, it's all a mishmash. So it'll be very interesting to hear what they have to say about what both companies need to do as well as what yachts need to do, because we've seen cyber attacks on yachts. We've seen cyber attacks, of course, on companies. There have been some very high profile attacks within the yachting industry in the past couple of months. So this will be a really informative webinar for you all. So thank you all again. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you soon.
Thank you all. Thanks, Julie, very much. It was great.